Understanding, used 160 times in 156 verses of the Bible. The intelligence and insight of both God and men.
If there's no such thing as hell, there's no such thing as absolute justice. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Rod Hembry, and you're watching the weekend edition of the Quick Study television program. We're going through the Bible in 1 year, and today we're in that great book, Vanity of Vanity, All is Vanities, talking about the afterlife, the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to be talking about this because the Bible says there is a hell and there is a heaven. But a lot of people don't want to believe in hell because it's terrifying. But if there's no hell, there's no justice. We'll talk about that and more coming up later. Corey is also here with Bible archaeology and history. Corey?
Today we are going to be taking a look at the history and the authorship of the book of Ecclesiastes. And we're also going to be taking a look at some ancient burial customs and practices surrounding death.
Very good, Corey. Thank you. We'll look forward to that. Ryan is also here with Cosmic Mysteries. Ryan?
Well, last month we studied some of the local planets right here in our own solar system. Well, this month we're going to be looking at planets outside of our solar system.
That and more coming up a little bit later on as we carry on. Also, we're going to tell you how you can get a hold of us and all about the Bible Guide coming up later on. Right now, let's study on. Here's Corey with Bible archaeology and history.
Today, as we continue to study through the book of Ecclesiastes, I'd like to study with you ancient burial practices, some practices that happen in very specific time periods in the ancient world. I hope you'll find it as interesting as I do. Ossuaries are boxes used to hold the bones of deceased humans. Just the bones. Depending on the time period of use, the bodies were buried, exposed to the elements, or placed in a tomb to allow the flesh to desiccate. Then, the bones were collected and placed in an ossuary. Curiously, ossuaries in the Middle East have only been found in common use during two very different time periods. What is called the Catalytic time period, normally placed around 3500 BC, with many biblical scholars believing that revisions need to be made to push those dates downward into the time of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and even Job. Ossuaries were again used beginning in the Herodian time period, the time encompassing Jesus' life on earth. A shallow yet obvious difference in the practice is that the very ancient ossuaries are made of clay with an opening wide enough for a human skull through which the remains were placed. These were made of various shapes, house-shaped, sometimes with faces molded onto them, and simple jar shapes, while the Herodian ossuaries are boxes carved from limestone with lids to permit access. While the first century use of ossuaries is relatively well documented, scholars are left to guess at the significance of their earlier use. Some believe that the house-like shaped ossuaries reference the dead's final home. Another theory points to the jar-shaped ossuaries, strikingly similar to grain storage jars, and suggests that the house-shaped ossuaries should be interpreted as grain storage facilities, ancient silos. Proponents of this theory believe that the grain aspect is symbolic of an ancient belief in resurrection of the dead, that like dried grain that sprouts when buried, the dead too will rise. None of these conclusions are set in stone, but the intriguing connection to the ancient biblical tradition of resurrection is difficult to disprove and intriguing.
It's time to explore the wise guys of the Bible, and they are all around us. Now, the unwise guy will reject the biblical worldview. So the Bible teaches that there is in fact heaven and there is in fact a hell. Heaven is for those who seek God and accept His provision for life. It's not about good works, but about God's work. Now, the Bible reports that God has made a final place for all injustice, all pain, sickness, sin, and suffering and evil. That place is called hell. We were never intended to be there. However, God accepts our free will decisions to follow Him or follow a fallen angel called Satan. We are wise guys if we consider to live by the biblical worldview and accept God's provision to rescue us from the very real place called hell.
Then I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. And look, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors there is power, but they have no comforter. Therefore I praised the dead who were already dead, more than the living who are still alive. Yet better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Again, I saw that for all toil and every skillful work, a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. Better a handful with quietness than both hands full together with toil and grasping for the wind. Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, without companion. He has neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors, nor is his eye satisfied with riches. But he never asks, "For whom do I toil and deprive myself of good?" This also is vanity and a grave misfortune. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 1 through 8.
There's a teaching that certainly is not new. It's been around for a long time, in fact, since the first century. And it's a teaching that has become more and more popular today in our politically correct society, which is unable to handle and deal with truth properly. It is called the teaching where there is no such thing as hell. Well, that might be a teaching acceptable for some other faith systems, but for the Bible believer, it certainly isn't acceptable, because the Bible believer knows and understands hell is a very real place. God did not make hell for us to go there. He made hell for Satan and his demons. But God Himself, in fact, honors our free will choice to spend eternity with the God we choose. Now, that's important. So today we're going to take a look at Ecclesiastes. It's a philosophical book, but it's going to show us the ramifications and the results of if there were no such thing as a hell. And so I want to take a look at this from Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Let us read, beloved, the Word of God. The teacher says, "Then I returned and I considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. And look, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors, I should say, there is power, but they also have no comforter. Therefore, I praised the dead who were already dead more than the living who were still alive. Yet better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun." It's a very nihilistic philosophy, isn't it? What he's saying is, if there is no consequence to those who are oppressing, if there is no accountability, then it's better for us never to be alive. Well, that brings me to the first study-wise point, and that is this. Beloved, if there is no hell, then there is no judgment for evil. Satan gets away with all of it. When you begin to remove the consequences and the reconciliation and the accountability as demonstrated both by the teachings of Jesus Christ in the gospel and also the teachings in the book of Revelation, you find that it's absolutely absurd for the Bible believer to believe in a God of the Bible if there are no consequences, if there's no judgment, if there's no results of how we act. And yet that is what the teaching of no hell ultimately brings into play. Here, the book of Ecclesiastes tells us it's an absurd belief. There has to be accountability, otherwise there's no purpose in living at all. He goes on to say in verse 4, "Again I saw that for all the toil and every skillful work that man has envied by his own neighbor, this also is vanity, and it is," I love this term, "grasping at the wind. In fact, the fool folds his hand and consumes his own flesh. Better a handful with quietness than both hands full together with the toil and the grasping for the wind." Here we see something very important. The idea of no purpose for rewards. Now, that's a really interesting idea, and when you look at the study-wise point, we understand what this means. If there is no hell, there is no reason to seek to improve our lives or to be unselfish. There is no accountability, there is no fear of God, and there is no reward. As a matter of fact, if there's no hell, there's really no need for salvation. What did Jesus save us for? He didn't save us from anything, because there's nothing for consequences of any kinds of sin. I find that interesting. So we're seeing here from the book of Ecclesiastes that a world or a supernatural eternity without consequences is pointless. It's vanity, and vanity, all is vanity. Now verse 7 and 8 says, "Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, without a companion. He has neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all of his labors, nor is his eye satisfied with riches. But he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and a grave misfortune." Which brings us really to our last study-wise point, and then a warning about these kinds of teachings. Here's the study-wise point. If there is no hell, there is no need for Christ to save us from it. It's all vanity. All our righteous labor for God is in vain, and it means nothing. Now, did you know, and a lot of people don't know this, that actually Jesus Christ himself in Matthew chapter 12 said this. He said, "For men will give an account, even those who know God, for every word said, every idle word said, and every deed done." Did you know that? Did you also know that Paul twice talks about the judgment seat of Christ, where believers in Jesus Christ are accountable? That judgment seat is called the Bema seat in Greek, is not to determine salvation, but that judgment seat is like the parable of the talents, to determine what you've done with the great gifts that God has given you. Then there's the great white throne judgment in Revelation, where those who have decided to reject God and follow Satan are then cast into the hell or the eternal fire. Now, beloved, may I say today that God is a just God. And unless you have a hell, you have no just God.
As we continue to study through the book of Ecclesiastes, I wanted to take this opportunity to actually take a look at the history and the transmission of the actual written text of Ecclesiastes. We're going to be talking about authorship, among other things. The title Ecclesiastes comes from the Greek, meaning assembly member, which is a translation of the Hebrew Koheleth, that means teacher. The author of Ecclesiastes has traditionally been seen as King Solomon. Chapter 1 claims the author as a son of David, and then in verse 12 claims him to be king over Israel in Jerusalem. Since Solomon was the only other king to reign over the entire nation of Israel, this statement points to his authorship. When paired with statements like those found in 1 Kings 4, ascribing 3,000 written proverbs, over 1,000 songs, and teachings on plants and animals to Solomon, this idea certainly meshes well with the tradition of his authorship. Many scholars, however, have not been convinced by the Bible. They often point to abnormalities in the language of Ecclesiastes that seem to be from a later time period than Solomon's time. It isn't appropriate, though, to base your belief on authorship only on linguistics. Form, content, and historical traditions need to be taken into account. The content of Ecclesiastes is most telling. The author shows an intimate knowledge of literature from Egypt and Babylon in the East. Specifically, in Ecclesiastes 9, allusions are made to the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh and to the Harper's Song from Egypt. If Ecclesiastes were written later than Solomon, during a period of Persian or Greek dominance as has been suggested, there are no allusions to any of their popular wisdom works. So why would an author only reference very ancient sources and not culturally contemporary ones? Also, it's intriguing that Ecclesiastes reveals knowledge of Egyptian and Babylonian documents. It's specifically said of Solomon in 1 Kings 4 that his wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East, greater than all the wisdom of Egypt.
All the Quick Study television programs in their full length are uploaded on YouTube 1 week before they air. Watch Quick Study on YouTube, and you can embed Quick Study in your website from the YouTube links. Quick Study Television is here each and every day because of our viewers who have become part of our Quick Study support team. We need your help to continue broadcasting this program each and every day. We depend on viewers just like you. And currently, when you give a gift of $100 or more to help us out in these times, as a gift of appreciation, we will send you this beautiful Quick Study Bible. Filled with notes and life lessons from the late Dr. Ron Hembry, this Bible is embedded with expository teaching that's in excellence. Call or write today for your Bible. Remember, when you give an offering of $100 or more, we will send you this beautiful Quick Study Bible. Write to P.O. Box 150, Murraysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. In Canada, P.O. Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, L9W5G2. As we continue to roll on through the scriptures, we have come across the possibility that there is a design in the universe and a designer. Here to help us understand more is Ryan Hembry with Cosmic Mysteries.
In the month of June, we looked at how many of the local planets right in our own solar system completely defy naturalistic explanations. Naturalistic meaning without a creator. Well, today we take a journey outside of our solar system to look for extrasolar planets. But do these exoplanets actually exist? Let's watch.
In recent years, NASA has been on the search for extrasolar planets, or exoplanets. These are planets orbiting other stars outside of our solar system. NASA's objective is to affirm evolution. Based on the theory of evolution, if planet Earth was just a happy accident, formed from a Big Bang, then there should be many other Earth-like planets in the universe with life. Although originally there were false claims due to bias, wishful thinking, and leaps in logic, in recent years, many good, well-founded methods of observational science have actually shown evidence for extrasolar planets. There are currently 4 methods. The first is a Doppler or radial velocity method. The second is a transit or photometric method. The third is direct imaging, and the fourth is a computer simulation technique called Blender. There are also various missions to specifically search for these planets, including ground telescopes and space-based observatories. These include the ground telescope Keck Interferometer, a space-based observatory called the Spitzer Space Telescope, another ground telescope called the Interferometer, the Kepler mission, and 2 future missions known as the Space Interferometry mission and the Terrestrial Planet Finder. As earlier mentioned, the methods used to detect exoplanets are actually quite sound. The first method is called the Doppler or radial velocity method. This is the method of measuring the spectrum of light from a star with extreme precision. As a planet orbits a star, its gravity affects the motion of the star, essentially making the star wobble. This also causes variations in the color of the light due to the Doppler effect. Even our own sun wobbles due to the gravitational pull of the planets in our solar system. One further note here is that the more mass a planet has, and the closer it is to its star, the greater the wobble will be. The reverse is also true. The smaller mass planets and the planets further away cause less of a wobble to its star. The second method used to find exoplanets is called the transit or photometric method. As a planet passes in front of its star, the light from the star dims slightly. For this method to work, the Earth must have a line-of-sight view of the star. Not only can the silhouette of a planet in front of its star give us the planet's size, but also the starlight skirting the planet can reveal the composition of any atmosphere. The third method used is called direct imaging. This is using the telescopes and observatories NASA has launched into space to take pictures of these objects orbiting their stars. The fourth method is actually a computer simulation technique called Blender. It is possible that a planet being observed using the transit method could actually be eclipsing binary stars rather than a planet. A binary star is 2 stars that orbit one another. This program runs simulations to figure out whether they are viewing a planet or eclipsing binary stars. Some Bible believers deny the existence of exoplanets altogether. Perhaps some fear that NASA will find intelligent life. However, it is interesting to note that in the nearly 700 exoplanets that have been discovered, so far not one of them are Earth-like. Even if other Earth-like planets do exist, there are an extremely numerous amount of conditions for life to exist. As Bible believers, we know that God did not create the Earth to be empty. He formed it to be inhabited. Astronomers everywhere are seeing witness that our Earth is a truly special place.
So exoplanets definitely exist, which excites the minds of naturalistic evolutionists. This is because it gives them more planets to work with. See, according to the naturalist, Earth is just a happy accident. So if that is true, then we should be finding lots of other planets out there teeming with life. Now, since our solar system doesn't contain a single shred of evidence for this, exoplanets are an exciting new venture for them. But what have exoplanets revealed? Well, on next weekend's broadcast, we'll continue our study.
Now, Ryan, just for the sake of argument, let's explain exactly what we mean by an exoplanet. I know you just went through it, but there's new viewers. What do we mean by an exoplanet?
These are planets outside of our solar system.
And they're actual planets, because most of the stars, well, all the stars that you see glowing, these are burning objects. And so an exoplanet is like a planet like the planets in our solar system. By the way, I still think Pluto's a planet. I don't care what the scientists say. But an exoplanet is an actual planet. So the idea is that if they can find one of those, maybe there's one with all of the various conditions that Earth has that might have life on it. That's what they're looking for, right?
That's correct.
Now, they haven't found a shred of evidence or even anything close to the conditions necessary for life to exist on any of those planets, have they?
Well, there's a lot of assumptions made. They would like it to be true, but there's, as we're going to see in the next few weekends here, there's a lot of assumptions that are involved.
So I'm pushing ahead of ourselves a little bit here. So really, the science fiction that you see about these things is indeed science fiction. And so we want to point that out. Very, very interesting. There is a design. Corey, this is Ecclesiastes. Is this one of your favorite books of the Bible?
It's an interesting one. I'm not really sure how to categorize my favorites. I really love getting in and obviously looking at the history of it, which Ecclesiastes, you're pretty limited, but it's very interesting philosophically and theologically.
Are you a philosopher, Corey? Are you a philosopher?
As in, do I think?
Do you philosophize?
Well, I think that if yes.
Okay. The answer is yes. If you're a Bible reader, if you're a Bible teacher, if you're an explorer of the Bible, you are actually exploring philosophy. And Corey, of course, along with Ryan, have courses on Bible Discovery Seminary. We want to encourage you to check out BibleDiscoveryTV.com. That's BibleDiscoveryTV.com, where you will find the Bible Discovery Seminary. And that's where you can learn more about the Bible and take a course in biblical history and archaeology, and also creation science. And also you can contact us. The Bible guides are coming every month for those who are partners with the program here, so that you don't miss a day. There's reading assignments for every day. Now here's Call to Prayer. The primary reason the biblical worldview has been rejected throughout humanity is because it brings accountability. And accountability is no friend of selfishness and easy living. God's wisdom is at work in us when we realize that free will of mankind has created the world in which we live, with its sickness, disease, death, starvation, and wars. But God's wisdom continues to develop in our minds when we realize that there are consequences to our sin, and God's grace moves in and moves us towards Him, Jesus Christ, because He came to heal and to help us out of our judgment and out of our sin. With that we pray, Lord, help me to remember my first love. You alone have saved me from judgment, and you alone have rescued me from hell. It is our commitment also to go through the book of Proverbs simultaneously as we go through the Bible. Now, we are going through the book of Proverbs in chapter 17, verse 5. Look at this proverb. This is interesting. He who mocks the poor reproaches his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. Look at that. God says those who are unfortunate, those who are frequently mocked because they are somehow less human beings than others, God takes it personal. You see, there is a God of justice. There is a God who is desirous that the innocent be protected, and that those who are bound be set free. You might be someone who's been violated in innocence. You might be someone who's struggling right now. God is for you, not against you. You say, well, Rod, that's easy for you to say. You don't know what I've been through. It seems like God's never been there. Oh, He's been there all the time, waiting for you to call on Him, ready to move. But He so honors your free will decision that He will not Himself move in unless He is invited. Invite Jesus to come into your heart and take over your oppression today and become free. Thank you for watching Quick Study today. Remember, we are supported by people just like you. If you would like to join us and become a member of the Quick Study support team, write or call today. Thank you for your generous support.